You're welcome to today's episode on Infosynthesis. I am Osondo Mbono. Today we'll be looking at the recent or latest recognition of the state of Palestine by 4 out of the 5 permanent UN Security Council members. With me to discuss this today is Mr. Nnamdi Elekwachi.
Thank you for having me. It's nice to be here. Viewers, you're welcome.
You're welcome, Mr. Nnamdi.
Thank you once again.
Recently, France, Russia, China, and the United Kingdom gave, well, it could be called a surprise recognition because personally I didn't see that coming, of the state of Palestine. They were now properly, recognized. But this recognition appears to be something that the Palestinian state should be celebrating. So for you, what do you make out of it?
Well, a lot that I actually made out of it. But then, diplomatic recognition is diplomatic recognition. Attainment of statehood is also attainment of statehood. And if you look at it, you see that what just happened is not only Britain, not only 4 of the permanent members, or the P5 as we call them, not only them, because you see that other allies like Australia, Canada, even Luxembourg and other countries, even Portugal, all recognize Palestine. So this tidal wave of recognition simply means that, yes, there is a step towards a 2-state solution has been profiled or has been tabled, being able to solve the problem in the Middle East. So it's one step towards that, because if you recognize Palestine, it simply means you are telling Palestine, you can now have mission in my country. I can also send my mission to your own country. You are having diplomatic exchange, which cuts across political, economic, social, cultural, and other forms of relations.
Yes, you are actually very right. Out of the 193 members, 157 have actually, given that recognition.
Yes.
But you, of course, remember that since 2012, the state of Palestine has been a non-member observer. What do you think is going to change now?
Nothing will change.
Nothing will change.
Nothing will change. Nothing will change. But then the only thing is that this recognition now, the relations between Palestine and these other countries or these new allies will now formalize. Where you are talking about embassy to embassy, or maybe exchange of diplomats. Are you following the point? Don't forget that even in 1988, Palestine, in fact, following that declaration in Algeria, many African countries recognized Palestine, including Nigeria. So the recognition had been there before. But while this is making the news, or sort of creating the kind of traffic we are seeing in news spaces, media, and then on platforms, is because it's being done by the West. Those who have hitherto stood against Palestine in some aspects. But like you said, what will change? To me, nothing will change because of the politics of veto. In the Security Council, membership is subject, in fact, in the United Nations, membership or admission thereof is subject to the politics of Security Council. And of the 15 members, you have 5 permanent members and then 10 non-permanent members. With a no vote from one of the permanent 5 members, nothing happens. So we are expecting Trump. Of course, Trump is not going to vote for the admission of Palestine, or will he recognize? Neither will he recognize Palestine. Don't forget, in 2024, just last year, Palestine resubmitted the bid it did in 2011 to be admitted as a member state, not just as a non-member state of the United Nations, and Trump stood against that. So to me, yes, we are seeing it a right step in the right direction towards 2-state solution as enshrined in Resolution 242 of the United Nations Security Council, also embedded in the Chapter 4 of the United Nations Charter. But if the United Nations want to play fair, I think it has to revisit its charter, particularly Article 103, Article 108, which talks about veto politics. So if all these countries are recognizing Palestine, and then with one vote, America says no, and it stands, it simply means there is need to restructure the UN.
Wow, there's need to restructure the UN. You would, of course, also remember that since the declaration of the State of Palestine, you recall in 1988, that was done by the PLO, there were discussions, just like you did mention about two-state solution. There was the Oslo Accord in 1993,
Yes.
that of 1995.
Yes, Oslo 1 and Oslo 2.
So what do you think has been preventing this two-state solution from being materialized?
Okay, thank you so much. You are not taking me back to history.
I just have to.
Yes, if you are looking at two-state solution, it didn't even start today.
Yes.
We now know, we are aware that we have like I did mention, Resolution 242 of the Security Council in 1967, following the Six-Day War. We also have other things, but now let me take you back to history. In the year 1915 and 1916, there was a correspondence known as McMahon and Hussein correspondence. That was during the war. That was during the First World War. Britain was appealing to Arabs, saying, revolt against Ottoman Turks, the Ottoman, the Turkish Empire, Ottomans, say revolt against them, because they were from 1517 to 1917. Turkey was there as the colonial masters, governing there. So we said, revolt against them, we will recognize you as states. That was what the correspondence was all about. 10 letters in that correspondence saying, revolt against them, we will recognize you as a country, as an independent country. But by 1916, the same Britain again secretly had an agreement known as Sykes-Picot Agreement with France on how to partition or even balkanize or divide Palestine along lines of interest. Russia was even among or involved. Later in 1917, against the letters written in McMahon and Hussein correspondence, Balfour Declaration came, which said that His Majesty wishes with favor establishment of a Jewish state in Palestine, it being that nothing shall be done which may prejudice the rights of non-Jewish communities there. That simply means you are recognizing a Jewish state here. Then you are also saying that that the existence of Jewish states should not prejudice, in other words, undermine or counter the existence of the other group. Then, of course, in 1920, Palestine had actually become mandate territory of the League of Nations, succeeded by the United Nations. The mandate was exercised by Britain. They controlled Palestine, did not give Palestine independence, did not give Israel independence. By 1948, Israel proclaimed her independence and the first war broke out between her and Arabs. Ever since then, it's been about what? Conquest and occupation against what has been written or embedded in Resolution 242. Again, it goes to tell you that what is happening in Palestine has been about what? Betrayal by those who should act. Whether you're talking about Britain, the way they exercise the mandate, the promises broken, and you're talking about systemic issue generally. Even institutions of the world, liberal institutions like the United Nations, the League of Nations, what did they do with Palestine? Are you following the point? Then Israel emerged by proclaiming itself. Israel proclaimed its independence unilaterally, and it came into being. Today, we don't have a state known as Palestine. So the world is saying, or those who are moving in support of Palestine are saying, recognize Palestine to exist as a state. Now that will take us to something. What makes a state one? What are the features of a state? If you go to Montevideo Convention,
before you go to that, I want us to step backward just a little.
Okay.
You just mentioned here that Israel unilaterally declared their independence as a state. When they did that, were they recognized by the UN?
When Israel declared, Israel was recognized,
and they were made a member.
Israel is a member of the United Nations.
I'm just asking a question for the benefit of our viewers. They unilaterally declared independence.
They declared their independence
by themselves
without waiting for Britain.
Fine, and they, of course, were accepted as a member of the UN.
In fact, that declaration ended the mandate.
Now, I now want to ask:
that declaration
ended the mandate?
Ended the mandate.
Absolutely. Now, why was the Palestinian declaration of our own independence in 1988 not also treated as the way Israel's declaration was treated? Why?
Thank you. Because of interest, politics of interest.
Interest by who?
By the powers that be.
Who are these powers that be?
United States of America,
Okay.
France, those who are even recognizing Palestine today. Were they open to the existence of Palestine as a country in the Middle East to exist side by side or to exist together with Israel with defined territories as enshrined in fact, pre-1967 map? Pre-1967 map. You can imagine that Israel has been occupying West Bank since 1967. And then all of that. The East Jerusalem, other places. And then in international law, it is guaranteed. Conquest does not give you territory. Conquest does not give you territory. So if you are conquering and you are acquiring, that is just expansion or occupation. I follow the point. So in most of those areas in Palestine are under occupation. But then is not even the issue. The issue is that when Palestine declared, where did it declare? Nigeria. How many countries of the world supported it? Yes, few from Africa and then all of that. But in all fairness, it was not in the interest of the US nor those of our Western allies to recognize the existence of Palestine at that time.
Geographically speaking, does the state of Israel consist of the territories of Palestine?
No. I did say something about the pre-war or the pre-1967 map. Israel knows its limits, but it has actually gone beyond. And then the implication of this is that there is symbolism in it. If you know the sentiments being expressed by Arabs, that you were born here, you no longer have access to where you were born because a force is occupying there. Another force is occupying there, calling it its territory, expanding, and then occupying.
In other words, the state of Israel sees the territory now being occupied by the Palestinians as Israeli territory.
They are occupying and they're pronouncing.
Occupying and pronouncing.
Yes, occupying and in most cases administering, living in those areas, administering it as part of Israel. Now, see the irony of it was that even in 1948, when Israel declared independence, Palestine failed to recognize Israel. Even the two-state solution, many Arab nations failed to honor the two-state solution. I follow the point because the right to return. In fact, before I even talk about the right to return, what even brought about Israel being there? It was about what? It was about the sympathy of the world. By 1881, you had pogrom in Russia where Jews were exterminated, were killed. By 1939 to 1945, of course, we all know Hitler and the Nazi extermination camps, Holocaust, attacks, and the world said no. Israel should exist in Palestine. That was going back to Zionism, and the world began in 1897 under Theodor Herzl.
That's right.
And then Menachem Begin and then others.
No, sorry. You said the world said no, and the world chose Israel or chose Palestinian land.
Yes,
for the Jews to go to.
In 1897, there was already a sentiment. I'm coming. There was already a sentiment. Zionism had begun. So the quest to go back to the to move Jews to Palestine was what Zionism was about.
To move Jews to Palestine. Now,
I'm coming because according to their own history, it was about displacements. Don't forget what the historians said. The history of Israel is written in blood and stone. It was about displacements. Even if you're talking about 722 BC, you have Assyrians conquering that part of the world. By 586 BC, Babylonians, the story of Nebuchadnezzar, it continued. Even in 70 AD, it was Rome. Before the present time, we've had crusades there. So a lot of wars had happened there, bringing about what? Displacement. I find the point of Jewish communities there before. So the sentiment being expressed by the late 19th century, that's 1897, was to return them because of persecution they felt they were suffering outside. So that sentiment was there. It was like a nationalist movement. Are you following the point? So that following the Holocaust and then the genocide against Israel, world sympathy, 6 million people were killed. So the world said, okay, let's work it out. The rights to return was actually guaranteed. They started settling in kibbutz from where they expanded.
Gradually.
Yes, to even taking some of the lands belonging to Palestinians who were there.
So the way forward, the U.S. refusal to also, of course, go ahead to recognize the state of Palestine diplomatically, obviously, is a roadblock.
It's an impediment.
Do you see U.S. going ahead to recognize the state of Palestine in future?
It's hard. It doesn't matter who is the president. Don't forget that Clinton proposed to recognize Jerusalem as the capital of Israel. Trump did it. So when you say that Jerusalem is the capital of Israel, then you turn again to say Palestine should be a state with all the features of, in fact, should be a state member, or a member state of the UN. You know what that means? Now, let me even make it clearer. According to the Montevideo Convention of 1933 on the rights and duties of states, there are attributes of a state. One is territory. Territory here is landmass, including physical features like mountain, terrains, and
rivers and water.
Even the air and rivers.
That's right.
Then you have population, human beings. From that population should come government, which makes sovereignty. And then if you go to 1648 Westphalia Treaty, after the 30 Years' War, sovereignty is needed for a state to exist. That's why all the modern states are known as Westphalian states. Unfortunately, Palestine is not yet a Westphalian state. Then you have sovereignty or government. Then the last is what we are discussing now: ability to enter into recognition, to enter into diplomatic relations. Palestine has a population, we know. There is a territory. I following the point. It even has a capital, Ramallah. It has a government.
That's right.
Fatah. Although you have Hamas, who were controlling Gaza until the war happened in 2023. I following the point. So you are even talking about PLO. PLO is represented by PA today, Palestine Authority or Palestine National Authority, PNA. I feel the point. But then, see the irony, Palestine is not a state. And unfortunately, cannot assume the responsibilities of a state or be accorded the status of a state by the United Nations because of Article 108 of the UN Charter. The veto politics. Just 2 clauses there.
Now, does it bother you that the Palestine and the state of Israel, though being seen as a religious, Mecca of some sort, is, in this constant turmoil of killings going on? Of course, I think in Gaza, there's still killing going on.
Yes.
So does it bother you that most of this carnage is being supported by Christian evangelicals in the US? Does it really bother you?
Yes, because
not to even okay.
Yes, because it is embedded in ideology. Every war has its ideological backing, or even in inclination, as the case may be. So in this case now, many still look at it from Christianity, Muslim, or Christianity Islam affair. And I'm interested. And then unfortunately, if you have to look at it, it's not just about that. It's about land, territory. It's about territorialism with symbolisms associated with it. But people are still making religious interpretation or trying to read it from the perspective of religion, especially those, I'm not against religion, but those who will go with the Bible. And that is why in history we talk about exclusivism. When we are using a particular text or standard to hold judgment without being eclectic, you are following, in fact, it is monocausal explanation. So those who are, because I know some senators in America are like that. They see Palestine as a heritage or as the right of Israel. But for anybody who understands history or who is a scholar of international relations, what should be important, what should be paramount is how to work out the two-state solution, because it's been a problem, because we are having fragmentations even in Palestine. Yes, we have the PLO. One may say we have a lot of political parties under that umbrella, even though Hamas is outside of it. You could be asking, which authority will the world recognize? Because in this recognition, there is implied recognition, there is de facto recognition, there is also de jure recognition. Are you following the point? At some point, Israel talks with Palestine. It is also recognition, de facto recognition. Are you following the point? At some point, they also talk with PLO. Of course, you mentioned the Oslo Accord. It was between Israel and the PLO.
That's right.
I follow the point. So, who will Israel negotiate with? It's become a problem because of what? The stateless nature of Palestine has left it open. That even if you talk about Arab sentiments, at some point, some Arab nations were also occupying lands in Palestine.
Finally, Mr. Nandi, the diplomatic recognition accorded to the state of Palestine, would it now afford them to be a member state of the UN?
No, I said no.
They will not be a member state.
Because we know, there was this song by Fela Kuti. He said, one vote to vote is equal to 92 or more. Beast of no nation. That goes to explain international politics at that level. Let me even say it, because I know that South Africa was taking Israel to ICJ. Israel is not a member of the ICC, International Criminal Court. So it was taking Israel to ICJ over the killings in Gaza and whatever. But the Security Council is the appellate body of the ICJ. That's unfortunate. And the Security Council still operates the politics of veto, whether or not you like it. So whatever America vetoes will not stand. Whatever Russia vetoes will not stand. Whatever China vetoes will not stand. Whatever Britain vetoes will not stand. These are the 5 countries considered as nuclear states, the only countries in the world, by international law standard, by anyhow you want to look at it, allowed to run nuclear program, allowed to own nuclear arsenals and weapons. So it is the structure of the world. That's why we are calling, even Africa called for the structuring of the United Nations to make Africa have at least 2 permanent seats through what is known as Ezoluwini consensus, Ezoluwini consensus in 2005. But the problem has been, if you are going there as a permanent member, who will go? Are you following the point now? Who will go? Because permanent seats are not rotated.
Yes.
They are permanent. Are you following the point? So it's just a permanent seat. So it's just about problems of the world, problems even in the Middle East. So even if you're talking about Palestine, yes, we have issues, but then there are a lot of questions. I saw what Hamas was actually tabling. At some point, it does appear that Hamas wanted the whole of Middle East too. That's also a contradiction. So when we go to talk about these things, the problem is that Palestine has actually given the world more trouble, that there is this difficulty in articulating, piecing together some of these international instruments to form composite or, and I would say, a holistic instrument that will address the question of Palestine. Many things are on the table. Few have been done. Even if at some point Trump was achieving peace between Israel and Saudi Arabia, and then other countries through the Abraham Accord. It wasn't long the war happened. Perhaps to divert attention or to change it. If it is not Israel attacking, it is Hamas attacking. Anytime they are nearing peace. So it's been like that. And that's why the two-state solution itself has become a problem.
Thank you very much, Mr. Nandi Elekwechi. The ball is now in your court. In the comment section, there seems to be no headway, but we expect probably in the nearest future, the state of Palestine will be properly recognized and made a member of the United Nations.